Sirens thread through a quiet street as rain needles the dark, and a recorded 911 call bleeds from a phone left on speaker. The caller gasps, she's not answering. A male voice pleads, Emily, where are you? A front door yawns open. Wind scatters mail across tile. A baby monitor crackles with soft breaths, and a distant lullaby set to repeat. Detective Daniel Ruiz said, body cams on. The foyer smells of bleach and rosemary. A fridge hums too loud like it is trying to hide. Laura Collins said, she left us a note. The paper trembles in her hand, edges wet. The ink tunnels downward, tight and frantic. Mark said, she wrote it while standing. Ruiz clocks the scene, counting steps, ceiling vents, the warm lamp with a cold bulb. The note reads like a map with no roads. It says, we are not alone. It says, check the shadows. It says, I hear the stairs. A thump lands above them, not heavy, not light, like someone practicing how to walk without sound. Ruiz said, stay by me. The house holds its breath and the night answers with nothing. The note sits on a plastic evidence sleeve while the house exhales grief in waves, and an officer closes the door to hold the night back. Ruiz said, tell me about tonight. Laura presses her lips until they pale and says, she read to them. She texted me a picture. She said the wind sounded like the sea. Mark said, we were early. The hallway light was on, the TV off, the stereo on an empty input. Ruiz stores each contradiction like nails in a small box. He pictures a clock that lost time without stopping. He pictures someone who rehearsed fear until it fit. Laura said, the note wasn't there when we left. Mark nods, then falters, I think. The baby monitor purrs, proof that innocence is sleeping somewhere in the dark. Ruiz said, what did she wear? Laura closes her eyes to find the thread and answers, blue sweater, hair in a braid, small silver charm. Outside, the rain keeps talking to itself, and inside the ink keeps sinking deeper. Emily Hart's name threads the rooms like a hymn sung by tired walls, and the photographs confirm the face everyone is afraid to picture here. Ruiz said, when did you meet her? Laura answers, last summer, referrals from 2 neighbors. Mark adds, she never canceled, she stayed late when we asked. Ruiz notes routine, reliability, a pattern that makes an interruption louder. A neighbor at the threshold whispers, I saw a van idle earlier. Ruiz turns, and the whisper shrinks. The hallway smells like wet denim and lemon cleaner. Laura said, she kept a small notebook for the kids, stickers, stars, silly drawings. Mark opens a drawer and finds it missing. Ruiz said, doors, windows, anyone with a spare key. Mark answers, only us and Emily. The stairs hold their shape like a held breath. Somewhere upstairs a toy rolls and stops against a baseboard, and nobody moves to pick it up. The note speaks even while silent, its strokes like heartbeat spikes turned sideways, and Ruiz traces the pressure with his eyes. He hears Emily in the margins. Emily said, the kids love monsters that turn friendly. Laura smiles without warmth and says, she did voices. She made storm nights feel like camping. Mark said, she double-checked the locks every time. Ruiz studies the deadbolt that shines with new polish. He said, who knew your schedule? Laura whispers, everyone at work. The same nights most weeks. A radio chirps about a neighbor's camera. Ruiz said, we collect every angle. He returns to the note and sees letters deepen where the pen paused, as if Emily waited for permission to be afraid. The sink smell of bleach is louder now. Ruiz said, no one cleansed mid-panic. The house does not argue, but the quiet feels like denial wearing a glove. The stairwell waits, and Ruiz climbs with the patience of a man counting to 10 between each heartbeat. He whispers, no surprises, to the officer behind him. Children's art lines the walls like tiny prayers, and a small shoe lies sideways by a vent. Laura said, we never leave that there. The nursery is warm and machine soft. A mobile rotates without music. Ruiz said, "Where would Emily write if she felt watched?" Laura points toward the kitchen, then stops. Mark said, "She'd move to light, not dark." Ruiz nods and measures a path through memory and fear. He kneels, listens to the floor, and hears only the old language of wood. The radio cracks. Neighbor camera ready. The rain eases and then returns, like a decision reconsidered. Ruiz said, "We start over. We follow her last certainty." The note on the table gleams like a coin, and the house dares them to read it again. The living room hums with the sound of an old clock, its tick louder than the silence of grief. Laura sits with her head bowed, clutching Emily's sweater to her chest. She said, "She always wore this when she read to them." Mark stares at the family photos on the mantel, words falling heavy. "She became part of this house." Ruiz listens without interruption, his pen still, the moment too fragile for notes. Laura said, "She made the children laugh like they belonged in a safer world." The fabric still carries faint perfume, a sweetness now stained with absence. Mark presses his fist to his mouth, unable to stop the memory of Emily singing lullabies. Ruiz said, "Tell me about her dreams." Laura's lips tremble. She wanted to teach. She said children gave her hope. The room feels smaller, as memories pile like unseen walls. Outside, rain clings to the window, streaking like tears too heavy to hold back. A small kitchen table becomes a shrine, cluttered with Emily's notebook, her favorite teabag left crumpled, and a silver charm bracelet. Laura runs her finger along the bracelet links, whispering, "She said each charm meant a wish." Mark said, "She never took it off, except when she bathed." Ruiz examines the empty chair across from Laura, picturing Emily filling the space with easy laughter. The air smells faintly of cinnamon from the candle she once lit for story nights. Laura said, "She wrote stars for good days, hearts for kind ones." The notebook pages are empty after last Thursday. Ruiz notes the abrupt stop, like a sentence cut mid-word. He said, "Objects remember what people forget." Mark squeezes Laura's shoulder, his own eyes wet. The rain has slowed, and the house echoes with a strange stillness that feels almost rehearsed. The children's playroom glows with drawings taped across the walls, stories of dragons and castles painted in crayon. Laura said, "Emily always sat right here, cross-legged, telling them every monster could change." Ruiz studies a crayon left broken on the rug, its red wax ground into fibers. Mark said, "She turned fear into games, even thunder became a drum." Laura closes her eyes, her smile flickering with pain. The room feels untouched, as if waiting for Emily's return to animate it again. Ruiz kneels, picking up the drawing of a girl, holding two children's hands, signed Emily with a small heart. He said, "She gave them her world." Laura answers, "She gave us peace." The toys seem still, their plastic eyes fixed in silence. A breeze lifts the corner of one drawing, making the heart tremble. Ruiz quietly presses the page back to the wall. The upstairs bedroom carries the hush of a space once alive with presence. Laura opens Emily's overnight bag, folded clothes neat, untouched. She said, she planned to stay after late shifts just in case. Mark sits on the bed's edge, staring at the pressed pillow indentation. Ruiz notes how order becomes louder when someone disappears. Oh. Laura lifts a book from the bag, a worn paperback of fairy tales. She said, "She read this every week." Ruiz said, "She was more than work to you." Laura nods slowly. She was family. The lamp on the nightstand holds dust, unlit for days, though the bulb is new. Mark presses his hand to the pillow, leaving a shallow mark. The room breathes with memory, a captured stillness. Ruiz writes one word, belonging. Outside, the rain shifts to a lighter drizzle, as if pausing to listen. At the family dining table, Ruiz spreads photographs of Emily, smiling with the children, laughter frozen in color. Laura's breath catches. She was only 22, but she carried herself like she'd lived twice. Mark said, She gave us time we didn't have. Ruiz observes how her presence stitched the family together, and now the absence frays every scene. Laura taps one photo where Emily lifts a child into sunlight, whispering, "She called them her stars." Mark leans back exhausted, his voice ragged. "She believed in making memories, not minutes." Ruiz said, "People like her don't just vanish. Someone wanted this silence." The photographs reflect the overhead light, faces caught in a frozen joy. The family table feels more like an altar, each picture a candle burning in stillness. The silence grows, sharper than words. The canvas begins with damp porches and guarded eyes, and Ruiz records every scrap like a miser of doubt. A neighbor whispers about a white van idling near the hydrant. Ruiz said, "Time." She says, "Sometime after 9, maybe later." Mark mutters that the hydrant is always clear on Tuesdays. Laura said, "Emily would notice a van." Another neighbor swears it was gray, not white, and the driver wore a cap pulled low. Ruiz files contradiction beside contradiction and lets silence do the pressing. He said, "License plate. 4-digit surface, hesitant and wrong. A dog barks at nothing, or almost nothing." Laura said, "She texted me a moon emoji at 9:17. Mark nods without certainty and stares at the street like it might confess. The rain leaves slick halos around shoe prints nobody owns now. The neighbor's camera coughs up footage like a reluctant witness, and timestamps drift with the storm. Ruiz said, "We bracket the window." A blur of headlights glides past, and the lens blooms white. Laura leans closer until her breath clouds the screen. Mark said, "That shape could be anything." Ruiz rewinds, slow, then slower, chasing a smear that might be letters. He said, "Compression lies, but patterns don't." A figure crosses the far curb and vanishes as a wiper sweeps. Laura says the gait feels familiar and then retracts the thought. Mark said, "We need sound," and the video refuses to help. Ruiz notes the rhythm of the lights and maps a route only geography can deny. The clock overlay jumps backward 1 minute, a digital stutter that feels like intent. Ruiz tracks the van to a mechanic who knows every dent like a family tree, and the name Owen Dale drops with a clank. Ruiz said, he lives 2 blocks east. Owen meets them on a porch that smells of oil and pine cleaner. He says he was at work until 10, then home alone with a game on mute. Laura studies his hands and sees fresh scrapes. Owen says the lift slipped on a truck yesterday. Mark notices a cap on the rail, the brim sweat-stained and bent. Ruiz said, "You drive a white van." Owen says it is primer gray, between colors, like a half-made decision. The mechanic's invoice agrees with the primer. Laura said, "Did you know Emily?" Owen shrugs and says he waved sometimes. Ruiz logs the shrug with the scrapes and the almost white van. Back at the house, the scene yields less than it promises, and bleach speaks louder than fingerprints. Ruiz said, "They cleaned the idea of a trace, not just the surface." The note bears pressure with no clear prints, like fear pressed through paper and left anonymous. Laura said, "She would not clean during bedtime." Mark agrees and paces a groove into the kitchen tile. A latent tech dusts the doorframe and finds half a ridge that dies mid-loop. Ruiz sketches the pattern of missing instead of found. He said, "The sink scrub began at the lip and moved clockwise." Laura closes her eyes to rebuild the last hour and fails. The baby monitor shows a sleeping shape that makes silence heavier. Ruiz writes one word and underlines it twice, staged. A handyman named Trevor Mills surfaces from a stack of invoices and a trail of spare keys, and he smiles like someone trained to reassure. Ruiz said, "You installed the new deadbolt." Trevor says the job was routine and paid in cash. Laura said, "He finished last month," and her certainty feels borrowed. Mark checks his calendar and finds an overlap with a late story night. Ruiz asks about Tuesday patterns, and Trevor talks in circles about materials and supply runs. The receipt dates argue with his memory by 2 days. Ruiz said, "Where were you after 9? Trevor says he was at a hardware store that closes at 8. The circle tightens and still holds nothing. Laura grips the chair until the wood creaks. Ruiz pockets the contradictions and calls for store video that may no longer exist. The file slams open again years later, dust replaced by digital scans, and Ruiz finds himself staring at Emily's note in blue pixels. He said, "We missed it." A forensic analyst leans in, pointing to an indentation invisible before. She says, "Pressure marks show another line beneath." The words are faint, like a ghost trying to speak. Laura grips her chair, whispering, "What did she try to write?" Mark mutters, "She wanted someone to know." Ruiz said, "We enlarge, we adjust, we uncover." The letters stretch out, spelling a partial name with jagged edges. "Oh." Laura gasps, "Owen." Ruiz writes it hard in his notebook, underlined twice. The note no longer warns in riddles, it points. The rain outside the precinct window drips in time with Laura's heartbeat, every drop marking what might have been seen years ago. Ruiz drives to Owen's garage, headlights cutting through drizzle, and the place hums with machines pretending innocence. Owen says, "You never quit, do you?" Ruiz answers, "You never finished explaining." Laura waits in the car, her reflection blurred on the glass. Mark paces near the hood, fists shoved into pockets. Ruiz points to the van, now painted darker but primer peaks where the coat chips. He said, "Paint hides history, but not truth." Owen smirks, "It's just metal." Ruiz watches his hands, the same knuckles scarred deeper now. The mechanic wipes them on a rag that comes away black, not red, but memory doesn't fade so easy. Ruiz said, "She wrote your name." Owen's smirk bends into something tighter, and the garage light flickers above like it knows a storm is inside the walls. Back in the precinct, Ruiz spreads Owen's work logs across the table, lines of ink that don't match his words. Ruiz said, "He claimed a late shift, but the logs end early." Laura leans in, whispering, "She knew him better than we thought." Mark adds, "She said the mechanic always waved." Ruiz cross-checks with gas receipts, and the timestamps slip like guilty footsteps. The analyst runs a match on paint flakes taken from Emily's sweater months before, and the computer spits out a primer gray signature. Ruiz slams his hand flat. "We had it in our hands all along." Laura presses a photo of Emily against her palm until her nails dent the print. Silence fills the room, not relief, but anger at years wasted while a name hid in plain sight. Ruiz revisits the stairwell in the Collins house, tracing Emily's last steps with a new certainty. He said, "She heard him inside." Laura shivers. He fixed the lock. He knew the turns. Mark mutters, "We trusted him." Ruiz touches the banister where Emily once paused, the grain still slick from years of polish. He imagines her writing in haste, every letter a plea. He whispers, "She saw Owen." The silence of the house feels different now, not hollow, but accusing. Laura said, "We lived with his shadow in our home." Ruiz nods, and he thought time would keep him safe. A storm rumbles outside, thunder matching the ache in their chests. The note that once taunted now testifies, and the walls carry her unfinished warning like an echo-given voice. The twist sharpens when Ruiz finds a hidden file, Owen's old arrest from a decade prior sealed under technical errors. He says, "History repeats until someone stops it." Laura gasps. "He was here before." Mark shakes his head, rage thick in his voice, "And no one warned us." Ruiz flips through faded photos of another girl who vanished, her smile lost to paperwork. He said, "Emily was not his first." The room chills though the heater hums. Laura presses her palms together, whispering, "She tried to save herself and others." Ruiz looks at the old mugshot, Owen's eyes blank, and feels time collapsing. He says, "The twist is he's always been here, hiding in plain sight." The storm outside rips, lightning across the glass, as if underlining what cannot be erased. The interrogation room breathes with fluorescent hum, its walls bare as bone, and Owen sits across from Ruiz with a smirk stretched thin. Ruiz said, "She wrote your name." Owen shrugs. "Coincidence?" Laura watches through glass, whispering, "He knows." Mark said, "He's mocking us." Ruiz presses a photo of Emily onto the table, the ink sheen catching cold light. He said, "You walked those stairs. You left that note unfinished." Owen leans back, his hands clasped like he holds all the answers. Ruiz leans forward, his voice a blade. "You underestimated memory." The silence thickens, every tick of the clock cracking like a whip. Owen finally says, "You've got nothing but ghosts." Ruiz replies, "And ghosts speak louder than you think." The storm outside drowns the hum, thunder pressing against the glass as if to demand truth itself. The tape recorder spins, red light steady, capturing words that twist like knives. Ruiz said, "Where were you after 9?" Owen replies, fixing a carburetor. Ruiz slides receipts across, each a contradiction sharpened by time. Laura mutters behind glass, "He can't keep it straight." Mark clenches his fists, knuckles pale. Ruiz asks, "Why bleach the sink if you never entered the house?" Owen smirks again. "Maybe they clean too much." Ruiz slams his palm flat, voice steel. "You knew the locks, you knew the turns, and you thought silence was protection." Owen's jaw ticks, just enough for Laura to whisper, "He's cracking." The air grows heavy, as if the walls close tighter with every word spoken. The courtroom becomes a stage, every eye fixed on Owen as the trial unfolds like a storm. Laura sits front row, clutching Emily's photograph, whispering, "This is for her." Mark rests his hand over hers, silent but steady. Ruiz testifies, his words sharp as nails, recounting the note, the paint flakes, the lies tangled in logs. The prosecutor lifts Emily's sweater, its blue fibers under spotlight, and the jury leans forward as if pulled by gravity. Owen avoids their gaze, staring at the floor like it holds escape. Laura said softly, "He can't look at her memory." The gavel pounds, echoing like thunder. The air inside is electric, the silence of 12 strangers carrying the weight of justice unspoken but near. The prosecutor's voice strikes like lightning, piecing every fragment together. She says, "Emily named him, even as fear closed around her." Ruiz nods at the evidence board, arrows linking note, van, and paint. Laura wipes her eyes, whispering, "She fought to be heard." Mark said, "She saved herself in ink." Owen leans back, his smirk gone, lips pressed to silence. The defense counters with technical gaps, arguing time-faded proof, but the jury sees the cracks that words cannot seal. Ruiz feels years of weight breaking apart as the story is laid bare. The gavel strikes again, the sound cutting like finality. Laura breathes deep, whispering, "She isn't forgotten." The climax peaks as the verdict lands. Silence split by a foreman's voice. "Guilty." Laura exhales with a sob she has carried for years, clutching Mark's arm. Ruiz closes his eyes, his pen still in hand, as if sealing the case inside himself. Owen's face stays blank, his eyes hollow, yet his knuckles clench the table until white. The gavel strikes again, thunder in wood, and the room erupts in whispers and tears. Laura whispers, "She won." Mark nods, voice breaking. "She was heard." Ruiz said quietly, "The shadows finally speak." The storm outside clears, leaving sunlight streaking the courtroom floor, golden and heavy, like a benediction too late, but not denied. The courthouse empties, leaving echoes where voices once thundered, and Laura lingers at the steps, clutching Emily's picture. She whispers, "It feels like victory, but hollow." Mark rests his hand on her shoulder, saying, "We'll never have her back." Ruiz watches from a distance, his coat pulled tight against the chill. He said softly, "Justice doesn't heal, it only names." The sky clears, but the wind carries the weight of years lost. Laura's tears slip onto the glass frame, each drop reflecting light like fractured stars. Mark says, "She deserved more than this ending." Ruiz turns away, knowing closure feels more like compromise. The city hum resumes, indifferent to grief, and the courthouse clock strikes once, its bell echoing into silence. At the Collins home, the dining table still holds photographs arranged like a shrine. Laura lights a small candle, whispering, "You're still here." Mark lowers into a chair, exhaustion heavy in his posture. He says, "I keep hearing her voice in the hall." Ruiz stands nearby, his notebook closed, hands folded, as though words cannot help now. The flame flickers against Emily's smiling face, bending her features into moving shadows. Laura wipes her eyes, saying, "The house feels like it's listening." Mark nods, voice breaking, but it answers with silence. Ruiz said, "She left a mark stronger than fear." The room holds both absence and presence at once, time folding around memory that refuses to dim. Ruiz walks alone through the precinct late, halls lined with case files stacked like headstones. He mutters, "Another name, another silence." His reflection in glass feels older, his shoulders heavier. He stops at Emily's file, now sealed with a red tag, and rests his hand on it. He said softly, "You wrote your truth, even when no one listened." The hum of fluorescent light above vibrates like a tired heart. Ruiz thinks of every family still waiting, every note unwritten. He whispers, "We solve one, but the others haunt." His pen rests in his pocket, unused but still warm. The precinct clock ticks louder than usual, counting time he cannot stop. At Emily's graveside, Laura kneels, pressing fresh flowers into the soil. She whispers, "We spoke for you, I hope you heard." Mark stands behind her, holding her shoulders steady, though his own frame trembles. Ruiz keeps his distance, hat in hand, head bowed. Laura's voice cracks, "They read your note, they believed you." Mark says, "You didn't fade, Em." The wind brushes through trees, carrying petals across the stone. Ruiz whispers to himself, "Her words lived longer than fear." The sky shifts to dusk, streaked with purple and gold, the world both ending and beginning at once. The grave waits in silence, but no longer without voice. Night falls, and the Collins house grows still again, its walls echoing with both grief and survival. Laura tucks the children into bed, whispering, "She kept you safe." Mark closes the door softly, his hand lingering on the frame. Ruiz sits in the kitchen with untouched coffee, staring at the note sealed in plastic. He says quietly, "Her words carried us here." Laura joins him, her face tired but steadier. She said, "Well, tell them who she was, not just how she left." Ruiz nods. "That's the justice she deserves." The house hums, not empty, but alive with memory. The silence no longer sharp, but softened into reverence. The verdict fades into memory, but the scars remain. Laura walks the empty street outside her home, holding Emily's sweater close. She whispers, "You should have grown old, not vanished." Mark joins her, his voice cracked. "She gave us more than time." Ruiz lingers by his car, coat collar raised, whispering, "She left her words, and we finally listened." The night air chills, stars faint behind clouded sky, the silence pressing in. Laura breathes deep, saying, "She was more than a case file." The world moves on, yet the house still hums with echoes of her laughter. Inside the Collins living room, photographs cover the mantel, each frame a piece of Emily's unfinished story. Laura said softly, "She belongs here forever." Mark whispers, "The children will know her name." Ruiz watches, quiet, his eyes shadowed with the weight of every unsolved case, still waiting. The fire burns low, its crackle carrying the weight of voices unspoken. Laura adds, "She saved us with ink, with courage." The room holds still, but the presence of Emily's memory beats louder than silence. Ruiz returns to his precinct desk, the case file closed, but never forgotten. He mutters, "Every shadow leaves its trace." His pen rests beside the folder, unused but waiting. The night hums with neon glow outside the window. He whispers, "Emily, you warned us, you wrote truth in fear." The silence of the office feels like a graveyard of names, yet one voice remains loud. He exhales slowly, saying, "We caught one, but how many remain?" The shadows stretch long, and his tired eyes hold the ache of unfinished wars. At Emily's grave, Laura kneels again, candlelight flickering against the stone. She whispers, "Your words saved us." Mark stands beside her, his voice thick, "You'll never fade." Ruiz stays back under the oak, murmuring, "She was braver than we'll ever be." The candlelight flickers in the wind, but does not die. The graveyard holds silence, but her voice lingers in every breath of those who remember. Laura presses her hand to the stone, whispering, "We carry you forward." The night bends heavy, but not empty. The story closes where it began, in silence pierced by words left behind. Ruiz whispers, "Check the shadows," she wrote. Laura adds, "But she was the light." Mark said, "Her truth outlived the fear." The final note gleams in its plastic sleeve, its ink darkened but never erased. Ruiz exhales. Justice is imperfect, but her voice is eternal. The night falls quiet, the storm long gone, leaving only the echo of a young woman's warning. Her last words linger, heavy, haunting, unforgettable. "We are not alone."